Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Lori Drake, and I am the Building Blocks Community Manager here at Handle. For those not familiar with Handle, we have a purpose-built platform that is specifically for material suppliers, focusing on lien rights management, waiver compliance with payment portal that accommodates all types of payments from check by phones to wires, ACH, credit cards, you name it. Today we are joined by Kris Citera. She is DFS Support Manager for ABC and has been with ABC Supply for over 20 years. She has a Bachelor of Science from the Arizona State University, multiple awards from ABC Supply throughout the years, including Most Valuable Player, Best Statistical Improvement, and Region of the Year. With expertise in debt recovery and collections, team leadership and building, process improvements, and turnaround strategies, we are excited to have her today. Thanks for joining us, Kris.
Thank you. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm just going to get to it. So thank you all for being here for this exciting topic of SubChapter 5 bankruptcy. First, what I want to do, though, is kind of go over bankruptcy. How did we come about to have bankruptcy laws in general terms, right? So believe it or not, bankruptcy law is fairly new. It started in the 1800s, and the genesis of it was because they were having some problems with some fur traders that were disappearing act, so to speak. So they came up with this kind of very simplistic law that says, hey, I can take your assets to pay me for the stuff that you owe, kind of thing. The history shows it's a back and forth kind of law, again, because the genesis of it was very micro. In the early bankruptcy, law favored the creditor and somewhat criminalized the debtor. And you'll see that kind of tone throughout our history with bankruptcy and how we sort of look at these laws. So it wasn't until 1978 that the Bankruptcy Code was actually created. And why that's a pinpoint in this is it was the inception of a federal approach to bankruptcy law, a codified as Title IX of the United States Code, uniform federal law that governs all bankruptcy cases, as I said before. And in that, the trustee will liquidate assets to pay off creditors. It created and organized an approach to this sector of the business. Further federal rules of bankruptcy and procedures were created. And then, as always, as with most things, and Lori can probably attest to this as well, you sometimes have to deal with state not so much differences in laws, but how they want to address the proceedings, so to speak. Then in 2005, our government came up with the Bankruptcy Abuse Prevention and Consumer Protection Act. In their minds, they thought that there was some fraud going on, so they put this into action and basically made it more difficult to file bankruptcy because they thought that there was a lot of fraud going on. Debtors, in order to do so, debtors' monthly income is higher than the median income of the state they reside in, subject to the items listed of applicable IRS living and standards. Presumed abuse occurs when the debtor has at least $182.50 in monthly available income after allowable deductions. Just in that in itself, you can see how almost archaic these approaches are, like who could possibly live off of that? And then credit counseling is now a requirement. Then fast forward to 2020, and this subchapter 5 is incredibly interesting. One, because it's so new, and two, because it came right before COVID hit. So although the genesis of it was in August of 2019 with your Small Business Reorganization Act, it didn't take effect until February of 2022. And we all know what happened around that timeline. Subchapter 5 is only meant for small businesses. It was created as a way to expedite the filing for smaller companies at definitely a more economical cost. in addition, the trustee is not an adversary towards them. Rather, the trustee is trying to help them get payments in so that they can come out with, I'm getting ahead of myself, but anyway, streamlined to reduce the process and cost of Chapter 11, as I said, and then not required to provide a disclosure statement or a reorg plan. And that was more than likely, this is my opinion, taken off to adhere to the very strict timelines that Subchapter 5 has. And they have those strict timelines because part of the appeal is that they're able to get through this bankruptcy in a very short time compared to Chapter 11's. Although they are required to provide detailed history of business operations, they have to do a liquidation analysis and a plan to meet the proposed payment schedules for bankruptcy. As I said, timelines are extremely essential to keep in Subchapter 5. If they miss these timelines, they can be disqualified and booted out. And as I've said several times now, it's meant to be faster than its parent of Chapter 11. As stated before, the trustee does not control the assets. They're more, again, they're not an adversary in this position in Chapter 5. They're meant to be helping the company help craft a plan to collect their payments. So they're trying to get in as much as liquidity as they can without completely liquefying and starting to go for like grabbacks that you'll see in Chapter 7's. The big beef in the credit community is that there's no creditors committee. That means that they're not asking for our opinion as they're going through trying to put together their plan to come out in reorg. I'll get to that. The courts approved the plans with consideration to creditors would receive as much or more compared to Chapter 7. The plan must be fair and equitable, and this plan has to be completed in 3 to 5 years. The other key point with Subchapter 5 is the benefit of it is that the company must use all of their disposable income to repay their creditors. So it's give and take, if you will. We also, as creditors, do have the ability to object to the plan during the confirmation process. However, that has to be based on facts, right? So in order to raise grounds for objection, the plan is not, it has to be not realistic, or it looks like there's not enough to make it successful. And it fails to provide an equal or greater value compared to if they had liquidated all assets.
Would this come with a proof of claim?
Absolutely. Always, always, always put in your proof of claim. And the fun thing about this too is, like I said, that disposable income, that includes payments to unsecured creditors. It's anybody who has put in that proof of claim. So I don't see as much as that critical vendor conversation in Subchapters 5 as I would in a straight 11. Like I said, to me, Subchapter 5 is, there's not a lot of meat to it as a credit practitioner because our involvement is fairly limited.
They said so. It mentions small companies. How small is a small company for this chapter?
So let's go over this one more time. So there's a limit to the debt. Due to COVID, it was raised to 7.5 million. And this is really interesting for us people that like to keep track of the bankruptcy stuff. So the original amount said you could only have liabilities basically of about $2.7 million, right? Then for, I think it was the CARES Act during COVID, they put in here, we are going to raise that debt ceiling to 7.5 million. The issue with that though is it's temporary. In our last budget that our president signed, it was extended, but it's looking to retire itself towards the end of this year in June in 2024. So it'll be curious to see how they address that. Are they going to allow it to roll back to the 2.7, or are they going to keep it at the 7.5? What they have not done is said, this is now officially a law. They just keep extending that timeline.
Is there a certain size that a company has to be in order to file in this chapter?
No, and in fact, you can be individual. And when I say that, that's your proprietorship, right? It is much more on what your debt ceiling is.
So a proprietor could use this instead of
Yes.
filing personally?
Yes, it's for an individual too,
Hmm.
in the capacity of a business.
So not their personal debt.
Right. My understanding, I would probably get verification on that. I'm not an attorney. That's my understanding.
So what kind of companies can file? Can a small supplier file? Is it subcontractors that file?
Sure.
Have you personally filed one yet or had to deal with one yet?
Oh, yeah. In fact, we have I'm not going to say names, that's not appropriate, but we have a fairly large, because you consider 7.5 million for a lot of your smaller companies, that's a lot of money to be in debt, right? So yeah, we file proof of claims all the time. Where I get interested in it is 100% seeing where the liquidity is. The one that we're currently working is a little bit unique in that they have plenty of assets to cover the liabilities, but it's hinging on another lawsuit. That's where it got, I think, a little sticky for them. But to me, the subchapter 5s are infinitely easier from a credit practitioner standpoint than chapter 11s. That's based on opinion. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that would disagree. And I say that because on the regular at these credit conferences, we're constantly talking about subchapter 5. It's always kind of a scratch my head moment, but to me, it's very straightforward.
So a question, can you clarify the difference between somebody doing a chapter 7 and somebody doing a chapter 5?
So your subchapter 5 is within your chapter 11.
Okay.
So you have your chapter 11 parent, and within that is your subchapter 5. Chapter 7 is its own deal.
Okay. So it has to be more of the reorganization kind of thing.
That's right.
I know it was interesting for me to hear how the bankruptcy code got started. It was actually started after I was born. That's kind of weird to think about that.
Right. And I like pointing that out because I don't think people realize how new it is. When I was putting this together, I was surprised on how it came about to begin with. And it was such an accusatory, like a very criminalized approach to it. And I don't know, I think that we still kind of have some of that tenor and tone in current time.
Yeah, so I do appreciate that.
It is fun stuff for sure. And I do like trying to simplify it. Yeah, well, I do like trying to simplify it compared to attorneys. Sometimes I think they make it sound more complicated than it is. So
another question here, does the trust fund statute relate to this at all?
In what capacity?
Yeah, I think like certain states have the trust fund statute. Can they file a chapter 5 when you're working with that?
No, so that's my experience has been those trust funds are usually more around like contractors' licenses and more geared towards homeowners and fraud.
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining again today, and thank you, Kris, for making it sound a little simpler on this topic.
Thank you.
Thank you again for your time, and we hope to see you at the next one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.